Let's talk about books 51 through 55 on the Robinson Curriculum book list. Let's get started. Our House. Hello, my name is Karen. Welcome back to Our House. And if you're new here, welcome. I like to help parents like yourself achieve sustainable and enjoyable homeschooling. And one of the best ways to do that is with the Robinson Curriculum, which is a self-taught methodology. It's a great method and it has a fantastic book list. So we're going to dive in this series. I've been continuing it where we just kind of break down and talk about the books, what makes them special, you know, the different classics, things like that. Also, maybe what some reservations would be, you know, what I've heard some parents maybe have problems with. Let's just talk about it because, of course, no book list is ever going to be perfect and make everybody happy. So I hope with this series, I can just give you an idea of if this is a book that, yes, you do want your kids to read or not, because that's the beauty of homeschooling, that you can tweak whatever method, whatever list to suit your family so that you feel good about it, right? That's the point. So let's dive into number 51. And if you want to see all the previous videos of the books up until this point, I will leave it in a card up above and also a playlist link down below. So number 51, I've got my list here, is Little Men by Louisa May Alcott. So here it is. Now, when you purchase the Robinson Curriculum, just to give you a recap, you get all the PDF book files and you can print them out yourselves. Or you can purchase them if you like. I love books. And I love these New West Press books. They do a fantastic job. They're very durable. So if you have a large family, multiple kids, this is a really nice way to go. They're not just scanned copies. It's just really nicely formatted, beautiful reprints. So Little Men, or another title you can find it for is Life at Plumfield with Jo's Boys. This is, of course, a novel by Louisa May Alcott. We talked about her already in a previous video when we talked about Little Women. You know, and this is a nice big size book. This is a little bit smaller here. This was first published in 1871 by the Roberts Brothers. So it's taking the characters from her Little Women series, and this is kind of like a sequel or the second book in the unofficial Little Women trilogy. So the trilogy ends with this other novel, Jo's Boys. So this is the ending here. And if you're not familiar with this classic, it's, you know, Jo and her husband and the various children at Plumfield Estate School. I highly recommend you go back and watch the first video where I mentioned her because I dive deep into her history. I'm not going to repeat it here, but she has a very interesting background. They were transcendentalists and they had very different ideas when it comes to education for that time period. Basically, it was about stressing the need for the school to be as home-like as possible. As an educational reformer, Alcott's father believed education should simply turn the child's mind inward to recognize that divinity. Alcott's father also believed that the theatrical performance of moral allegories by children would train them in the self-restraint that was the basis of domestic harmony and happiness. Now, soon after the publication of this book, the public and educational reformers, they, warmed up to these ideas as well. For example, a quote here said they embraced these theories too, arguing their applicability to all children, but particularly of the poor, who it was believed most needed moral education a home-like school could offer. So this sort of fictional Plumfield school actually did become, an ideal model of combining home and school. So this is number 51, and just to remind you, each book on the book list is assigned a category, whether it be history, world history, American history. This is literature. Now, moving on to number 52, that is the McGuffey's Fourth Reader. And this is where the McGuffey readers, they really get intense, as you can see here. It's really great. It's great. I love all the McGuffey readers. I have the original, and I know there's a eclectic. We talked about this in a previous video when we started talking about the McGuffey readers. This is the one that actually William H. McGuffey created, the revised eclectic versions that they made some changes. They try to make it more secular, appeasing to a changing world. He never actually approved it, but they put his name on that. So just keep that in mind. But this is known as the McGuffey Readers, and they were meant for grade levels 1 to 6. They were widely used as textbooks in American schools from the mid-19th century to early 20th century, and they're actually still pretty popular today with homeschooling families. Now, what you might not actually be aware of is that William H. McGuffey, he created the first 4 readers, and then his brother, Alexander McGuffey, he created the 5th and 6th readers, which we will talk about later on in the list. About 120 million copies of the McGuffey readers were sold between 1836 and 1960, placing its sales in a category with the Bible and Webster's Dictionary. Since 1961, they have continued to sell at a rate of popularity with some 30,000 copies a year. Only Ray's Arithmetic series matched it in popularity during that time, 1834 to 1913, which was written by a colleague of the McGuffeys in 1834. Now, in case you don't know this, with RC Online, you have all of the Ray's Arithmetic books for free. So if you're overseas, you can't get the Saxon textbooks, or you're here in the States, you can't really afford them, that's an alternative. That's a great one. You know, that was what America got started with, you know, the McGuffey Readers and Ray's Arithmetic. So I also use the first few lessons of the first book in my RC course for littles. So great program. If you want to check it out, I'll leave some information down below. Remember, you have access to it for free with RC Online. Now, a little fun fact, in the show Little House on the Prairie, the TV series, the McGuffey Readers are frequently seen being used as the schoolhouse. Now, I've never seen the TV series, but I do read the books out loud to my kids, and I always hear them mention their school books. I wondered if it was this. So if you've ever watched that series, let me know if you have seen these on there. So this is number 52, and this also falls under the literature category. Now, moving on to a very interesting number 53, that is The Pied Piper by Robert Browning, and this also goes in the literature category. This is the one that is from New West Press. Like I've mentioned before, I really like their reprints. It has some really nice illustrations here. And this is another one that I found at a book sale. This one, I love inscriptions, don't you? This one says, "To Nicole from Grandma, April 17, 1975. So I just always love buying these books with inscriptions, and also some nice pictures here. Now, the thing with this book, this is very interesting. So if you're not familiar with this classic, The Pied Piper of Hamelin, this is a German tale of, the legend dates back to the Middle Ages. The earliest references are describing a piper dressed in multicolored clothing who was a rat catcher hired by the town to lure rats away with his magic pipe. However, when the citizens refuse to pay for the service as promised, he retaliates by using his instruments, magical powers, on their children, leading them away as he had the rats. Now, the versions with RC and these, you know, they have a happy ending. It says the children went to a happy place. However, if you look up some alternative endings or what people thought of that might have possibly happened, you know, because it's based on this sort of folk tale, something that actually happened, it gets really dark. It's very bizarre. Now, I don't really know if it's one of those situations where if you're not using the RC file, it could be a little bit of a jungle out there, what version you're getting. I know this is the complete unabridged version with New West Press, you know, but I'm sure maybe there's probably some adaptations, some different versions out there, but I would think if you're getting the Robert Browning one, you should be fine. It's obviously a classic. It has really great vocabulary, and I think it also covers sort of the poetry category as well as literature, but you know, like a lot of the fairy tales and classics and things like that from that time period, that long ago, sometimes parents find them a little creepy today. So I'm thinking about other books as well, not on the RC book list, but like the Grimm's fairy tales or some. I know some parents even think nursery rhymes on the book list is a little weird, you know, so this one is maybe one that you might want to look over, make sure you're okay with. Moving on to number 54. I actually don't have that with me. It's because it's The Friend of Washington, A Young Folk's Life of General Lafayette. This is by Henry Clay Watson. Now, this book is extremely hard to find. I have never been able to find a good copy of it anywhere. There might be a reprint on Amazon that's really bad. I'm sure I bought it and threw it away. But as far as a good quality reprint, I have not seen it yet. This is one that I print every single time whenever one of our kids is going to start reading it. And I recently just did. And now that book, after that book was finished being read, has disappeared. So this is one that I just print over and over again. And, you know, they get a beating here at our house, so they never really last longer than more than one kid. I probably could make it more durable if I laminated it, if I really did it right. But lately I just print it, bind it, and hand it off. So this book is about the life of Marquise Lafayette, written from the perspective of an admiring and grateful United States, recording the events of Lafayette's life and actions, both in service of the young United States and his homeland in France. Now, there is not a lot about this author. It's one of those books that it's kind of hard to find. There's not really a lot on the book, not really a lot on the author. However, there are a lot of great reviews on this book. And I think that just goes to show you how special this book is. So I wanted to read you just one quick review I saw on Amazon. So here's one example. If you are any sort of a history buff and a patriot, this book and the personal heart and gift that he gave to our struggling colonies to gain their freedom, you will cherish this book. This man gave up everything, even his title, for the new America, and his military genius in support of George Washington is astounding as well. So this is a great book. You know, make sure your kids read this. This is under the literature category as well as American history and world history. So here's people who ask, well, what about this? What about history? You know, you're reading books like this. It's fantastic. It's way better than any textbook or workbook that briefly covers it. Now, 55, I actually don't have it with me because this is an author that I just choose to skip. That is Brave and Bold by Horatio Alger Jr. And this falls under the social studies and literature category. Now, Brave and Bold was actually serialized. It was published in parts in the New York Weekly beginning August 5th, 1872. So a long time ago. Now, by this point, you know, he had written a lot of books, boys' books as they were called. He was losing some steam as the 1870s approached because he kind of, you know, really just beat that dead horse with those stories with poor kids. And so kids at that time, boys felt like, I already know everything about these poor kids and these rags to riches stories. They wanted more like action and Indians and cowboys and fighting. That's what, you know, they were wanting to read more back then. So Alger's publishing agents kind of put the pressure on him to accelerate and write something like this. That's where we get Brave and Bold. So that book actually hit a new high in Alger's work, according to Edwin Hoyt, but Hoyt describes the story as a fiasco. Gary Shamhorse describes it as horrifying and lists a shooting, a stabbing, and a suicide among the book's elements. The book was reviewed by a reader of the children's magazine St. Nicholas. He described it as of sensational order. So it was very mixed reviews, right? And was glad, though, that he did not meet its characters in real life. This was actually the last review of an Alger work published by the prestigious magazine. The book initiated this controversy, though, over making Alger's work available to the young. So this is where it kind of got a little controversial. Prior to this, his books, when it came to female roles, you know, they were like a supporting sister or a friend. This book was the first one that introduced kind of a love interest, a character like that. You know, so just keep that in mind. That's what I'm here for. I'm just, you know, giving you all the little things and what things you might want to watch out for. I know some people say they love these books. They love this series. And it was some of their favorites growing up. And then, you know, some others, you know, like me, who are more opposed to it and just choose to skip it. I talk about him in a previous video as well, because this is not the first time he comes up on the RC book list. So that's it. I'm just going to do 5 at a time to not make these videos too long. So to review, we have social studies, we have literature. I think we have poetry as well. American history, world history, a lot of literature. And you know, the McGuffey's Reader, this really is like a whole language arts program, seriously, because, for example, let's take one lesson. Here's a lesson on the Americas, right? There's different sections here. The content, there's about 11 points. Then there's questions. What is the testimony of history on the permanence of national greatness? What is said of the character of Washington? How does he compare with Caesar, Scipio, Hannibal, Bonaparte? Then there's some errors here, and then there's spell and define. They want you to define what is a chronicler, achievements, establishments, immortality, impression, contemplating, convulsion, hemisphere, revolutionists, patriotism. So it's much more than just reading a book. Now it's up to you if you want them to do all of these things. You could just have them read it. They could just think about these questions. Could they answer them? Do they know the meaning of these words? It doesn't have to be very formal. It could be informal. But honestly, if you need to put something down for language arts, look no further than the McGuffey readers, right? So that's the books for this book series. I will link again a card where you can, and a playlist down below where you can watch the previous videos. And let me know in the comments down below, what are your thoughts on these books? Do you love them? Do you have some reservations? Are you tweaking the list? Are you leaving it as is? This is just a fantastic jumping off point, as well as you get all of the book files. You don't have to hunt them down. I know I do. I like to buy them. I like to have the physical copies, but you don't have to. You have all the PDF files, which is a really good thing to have when it comes to censorship in this day and age, because things are getting scrubbed, disclaimers are being put on the Declaration of Independence. Who knows what's next and what books might disappear from the public domain. So for that alone, I would purchase the RC curriculum. Just my little 2 cents there. Now, if you are kind of interested in RC, but you don't really know how it works, I do have a free course, 13 videos, A to Z, all about it. I will link it down below. It's my gift to you because I truly think it's just the best way to homeschool. Make sure that you hit the subscribe button to watch the follow-up videos, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.